Nah. Dude, that's so weird. I mean, it's working. What a bug is this? Oh, you know what it is? Not a bug. Okay. I forgot I didn't have player highlighted. Okay. Alright, that makes sense. Alright, so something's wrong with the animation here. Is it just archer layer? Yeah, it's just the archer layer, so something's off with that. Because the walking animation is probably... fixed duration? I might be wrong. Fixed duration. Idle. Something wrong with the animation. It's so weird. So, animator, walking. It goes here and then it doesn't continue. Why? Archer walking. Oh. Idle. Exit, exit. Exit 1 is when it's attacking, it's true. This shooting is true. Because then it's going to go through here to is shooting. Oh, all of them do it. It's interesting. You know what? I guess that makes sense, because if it says is idle, the walking animation is not continuing. So let me take a look at the animations. Oh, you know why? I know why. I know exactly why. Hold on. I just realized something. Wait, why does this say new? Oh, okay. We need to go to animations, archer, shooting, archer, walking. Bring that to loop. Loop, archer, shooting. No looping for shooting. I think I just fixed it. Yay. That was an easy fix. That looks so bad. Okay. Bug fixed. All right, so let's go back to scene. Let's drop this down. Continue.
First of all, I'm going to turn this into an else if statement, and up here we're going to go if is shooting equals true. And when in archer mode, we can in fact fire the bow, and he stops his running while shooting, which For a while now, people have been asking me about a shop system tutorial. While shops aren't all that complicated, what makes them difficult is that they have to interact with so many other systems. They have to communicate with individual items, with your inventory manager, your player's health system, and your character's stats manager. This can be hard to account for in a single tutorial. But the time has finally come. My action RPG series is at a point where it really needs some items, which means it needs an inventory system, which means we should really add a shop. So for the next 2 weeks, I'll be releasing a new video each week that will work us up to adding a shop system into our game. That said, if you'd like to encourage me to, will appreciate this sort of content. Hope to see you in the next video when it drops next week. Hey everyone, it's Matt here with Nightrun Studio, and in this new series, we're working towards making a shop system. Along the way, we'll add an inventory as well as item collection. In this first video, we're focusing in on the items. At this point, they're not necessarily going to do much, but you will be able to collect them, they'll be animated to hop up into the air, and we're going to use scriptable objects in order to give them data that we'll use later on. For example, you'll be able to put a loot prefab into your scene, and once you create a item scriptable object, you can decide what stats it should have,
doing a lot of
that sort of thing. And when you pop the scriptable object onto the loot prefab, it will automatically take on the sprite and name of that scriptable object. That's where we're headed in this video. Let's get started. Now, before we go making our loot, we're going to need the data that fills it. So let's start off by making our item scriptable object. I'm going to head into my scripts folder where I'm actually going to create a brand new folder. I'm going to call this one Inventory and Shop. We'll open that up, and I'll create a new C# script, which we'll call item SO. Now,
he does that so fast. These are nice short videos, which is great. Inventory shop, inventory and shop, huh? Scriptable objects. What are we making?
We'll open that up, and I'll create a new C# script, which we'll call item SO.
Ah, gotcha. Scriptable objects. Such a cool idea. Isn't there like an easy way to make things bigger? Sometimes it's like control that. Increase control plus, yeah, so I thought I had control. It's not recommended. The key combination control 0. It's not a command. Control shift. Right, so if I was, yeah, so reset font size was control 0. Whatever, I'm not gonna worry about it.
Now, scriptable objects do not derive from mono behavior, so they don't have start or update methods. We'll also change the mono behavior line to scriptable object. Additionally, we want to have a drop-down menu in-game where we can select when we want to create new scriptable objects. So let's come above our class name here, and we'll just type create asset menu, and we'll give it the file name of new item.
All right, so this is going to be like scriptable objects. Get rid of the this because that's what we need. All right, we had to create the create assets menu. File name equals new item. Okay. And this is where we just give it its
begin by
stats.
making a public string for the item name, as well as another string for the item description. We want to give visual identity to this object, so we'll also have a public sprite, which we can just call icon. I always like to test early so we can catch mistakes. So we'll also have a public sprite, which we can...
All right, so we need the item name, the item description, and obviously we need sprite, the icon. Okay. Fair enough.
just call icon. I always like to test early so we can catch mistakes as they're happening. So let's pop back into Unity. And I'm just going to create a new folder first of all, which I'll call item SOs.
Really? I guess it's not a bad idea.
We'll then head inside of there, and we should now be able to go create, and we should see the item SO option appear up at the screen. I'm just going to create one here, which I'll call mushroom.
What? It's down here. Alright, mushroom.
I'll give the in-game name also mushroom. I'll select an icon. If you're using tiny swords, it's strangely labeled as 03. And then I'll also just write in a little description. Though you'll notice...
It's an item. An item. So this is marked 03.
that the description box is very small. If you'd like to make that description box a little larger, you can just come in front of the variable here and go text area, though make sure that you spell text.
Yeah, I think I like that idea. Text area in front of the public string. Aha! Hey, that's nice. It's an item that does a thing.
As it's actually spelled. Now you'll have a much larger box that you can work with. At this point, we're ready to add some more data. First of all, let's make a public bool called isGold. Now we can get into our stats, and I'm just going to make a header here, which I'll call stats. If you've been following along since...
So it's just more things. Okay. Okay. Oh, oops.
the stats manager video, you will have a manager here with a bunch of stats already. Just select the ones that you want to be editable by items. For example, weapon range or knockback might not, but things like damage, speed, and health probably will. Now we'll just give this an integer for each stat that we want to be able to change. So I'll make one for current health, max health.
Yeah, that's cool. I get it.
another for speed, and finally one for damage. Now you might
Defense. I would want one for now. I guess if it's an item, you wouldn't really want it. Yeah, you could, I guess.
want to have some items whose effects are only temporary, so I'll make another header here for temporary items, and we'll make a public float this time called duration. Later on, we'll be able to put a number in here, and that will make it so that this item only lasts for a set amount of time. You can check if you're on the right track by clicking on your scriptable object, and you should see all those stats now. Now next up, let's head back to scriptable object, and you should see all those stats for a set amount of time. You can check if you're on the right track by clicking on your scriptable object, and you should see all those stats now. Now next up, let's head back into our inventory and shop folder and create a new script, and this one will be for our loot.
Loot.
Now before we get into that script, let's actually make the game object. So in our hierarchy, we can right click. We'll create an empty game object, which we'll call loot prefab.
Okay.
We can then right click on that object and add a 2D sprite, and in this case I'll put a circle in here. The reason we're doing this is because we want a child, which will handle the visual identity of the object, and then we'll handle the logic and physics on the parent.
Circle. Oh. Edit. What? Oh, because it's... Because it's behind. Dude, my layers are not good. Let's fix that. We're gonna go to this round, order and layer. -5, but it doesn't have water. What's up with the water? Oh, that's -5. That should solve that problem for a while. It's not the way I would do it, but what I'm doing.
This will become especially important when we animate our loot pickups. Now to set up the loot prefab, we're going to want to add a collider. I'm going to use a circle collider 2D, and I'll just set it to be a trigger. That way things like my enemies won't be bumping into them. We'll also add an animator, as we'll need that shortly, and our loot script. With that done, we can head into the script itself. Now we won't need the starter update method, so we can get rid of those. And now let's make a reference to that scriptable object we just...
Yeah, I was gonna say we need a reference. So where are we doing that? We're doing that in loop.
just created. Next, we're going to actually want to
we need
give
a
script
sprite.
access to things like our sprite renderer.
Yep.
So we'll make a public sprite renderer called SR, as well as a public animator, which we'll just call anim. Quantity is going to be handled through this loot object. That way you can have some mushrooms that when you pick them up you get 5, and other times you only get 1. And the first thing we want to do is make it so that when we add the scriptable object to the loot game object, it updates its image and name. We'll do this in our onValidate method. And here we're just going to start with a null check. So we'll type if item SO is null, return. Next, we can just make it so that the sprite renderer sprite
So if it's null, move it. That's why would it be null, right? It would disappear. Assignment sprite equals item SO dot icon, I presume.
is equal to our item scriptable objects icon.
Yeah.
And then we'll also make it so that this game object's name is equal to the item scriptable objects.
That makes sense. Very convenient.
Item name. Back in Unity, we can click on the loot prefab now
And add the
actually
sprite. Okay, this is making sense. So here, we don't care about the circle. We care about. Uh-oh. Why is that there? Oh, you know why? When I moved it, I moved the sprites. I didn't move the object. I want to move the object. Alright, so then here we have the scriptable object we need to drop on. We want to circle mushroom on the scriptable object, sprite render, here, anim, it's here, quantity, -1.
some things. So let's start by dragging our animator into that slot. We'll make sure that it can talk to the sprite renderer, which is in the sprite child object. We'll give it a quantity, and finally make sure to select a scriptable object. And you'll notice as soon as we did that, it should update its name.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Sweet. Yeah, items. It's awfully small. You know why it's small? Because if we go to wherever the hell that is, tiny packages, resources, gold mine resources. Trees. Decoration. Yeah, so what we want to do, first off, ship all. I'm going to make all these 64. Make all these 32-bit. Make them all point filter. Apply. Boom. I mean, whatever, right?
Name as well as its sprite. All right, so we're now updating the object's name and sprite on the map, but it's not actually doing anything yet. So let's animate it so that we can pick this object up. I'm going to go to my animation tab, though if you don't have that yet, you can just go to Window, Animation, and select Animation. At this point, we'll make sure that you are on the parent object of your loot prefab and hit Create. I'm going to go into my Animations folder, and I'm just going to call this one Loot Pickup. Now, while
Create. Animations. Loots. Okay.
While this animation is on the mushroom parent object, it's actually the child's sprite that we're going to be doing the animation to. So now we can hit the record button, click on the sprite, and first thing I want to just do is set its order and layer to a really high number. I'm going to go with 50. That way I can be sure that it will appear in front of the player. I'm then going to head to about the 5 frame mark, and I just want the item to hop up in the air. So we'll grab our transform tool, lift it up nice and high. I'll then click on my scale tool, and I'm just going to stretch it out nice and tall, as well as nice and...
Oh wait, hold on. We'll see. 5 seconds. Yank. Scale it. This tool. No, that's not the scaler. This is the scaler.
and skinny. This will give it a nice cartoony squash and stretch effect. At this point, what I want it is for it to hover at its apex for just a little while. So I'm going to, first of all, set our sprite render back to 1. So now when it drops, it'll fall in behind the player. And then I'll head to the 10 frame mark.
Then at the 10 mark, what are we doing?
Mark on my animation. At this point, I want it to just kind of come up a tiny bit more, sort of floaty, and we'll also have it go back to its normal size. So if I open my transform, I can just set its X. And Y values to 1. And 1. Now as I slide across, it gets tall and skinny, and then at the top it sort of squishes back to normal.
Oh yeah, it does. Look at it.
We're now ready to come back down. I want the object to fall slower than it jumped up in the air, so this time we'll give it 10 frames to do its fall. I can just set its Y position to 0 so that it goes back to where it started. However, throughout the course of this, we actually want it to stretch again. So I'll just go to the end here where I'm going to stretch it out once more, nice and tall and skinny. And so now it stretches into the air, kind of goes back to normal, and then as it falls, it stretches out yet again. Now the one other effect we can do here if we
Zero, scratch.
like is we can make it so the object actually fades out as it falls. Now to do this, we'll just go to the end of our animation, click on color, and drag our alpha all the way to 0. So
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's so fast. Oh no.
so that at the end it's fully transparent. However, now it's going to start fading out immediately,
Yeah,
which we
exactly.
don't want. So let's go back to our apex, make sure that we take our alpha.
Oh yeah. So we just go here. And then just put the alpha back to 1. So well, goes down, disappears.
Alpha to full at that point, so that it only starts fading as it falls downward. That's looking pretty good, though obviously we don't want this thing looping and hopping up and down over and over again. So I'm just going to type in loot, click on the animation itself, and turn off loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Project. Loot, animation.
Time so that it only plays once. Now next we'll click on the mushroom and go to our animator pane, and you'll notice that right now loot pickup is the default action. So if we press play, it would just play that animation right away. We don't want that, so let's create a new empty state. We can call this one idle. And then we're just going to right click on it and make sure that it is the default state for this layer. I'm also just going to sort of reorganize things here. I'll just move loop.
What is the deal? Is it glitchy? Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I knew something wasn't right. Okay.
Pickup up to the side here. All right, with that done, we're ready to head into our script and activate this. Now you'll probably remember that we set our loop prefab to have a trigger on it. So here we're going to use our onTriggerEnter method. We'll just do a quick check whenever something hits the item to see if the collision, and here we'll just do a compare tag to check that it's player. Now if in fact the item has been hit by the player, we want to trigger that animation.
Why that keeps happening. That's annoying. Okay. Collision. Game objects. Collision. Pair. Play. Loot pickup. Wow, that's the name of the animation? I did call it that, right? Loot underscore pickup.
Now we don't want the item hanging around on our map after we've picked it up, so let's also destroy the game object. Though if we did it like this, it would destroy itself before it has time to play the animation. So we're just going to add a comma here, and our animation currently lasts for about 20 frames, which is about 1/3 of a second. So let's give it 1/2 a second so that we can know it will safely finish the animation before destroying. And just before we test, make sure to click on the player and just double check that you are in fact tagged as player, otherwise the item won't know when a player's collecting it. Now when we get in the game, the mushroom starts off idle, but when we collect it,
So is it just gonna play that? Oh, because it's just calling this from the script. Okay, that's easy. Alright, so now we need loot prefab mushroom. We need oh,
1/3 of a second. So let's give it 1/2 a second so that we can know it will safely finish the
we need
animation
anim on the
before
loop.
destroying. And just before we test, make sure to click on the player and just double check.
Oh, the tag.
you are
Yeah,
in
yeah,
fact
we got
tagged as
that.
player, otherwise the item won't know when a player's collecting it. Now,
Let's see. Are we gonna collect a goodie or not? Nice. Collecting things. Sweet.
Now when we get in the game, the mushroom starts off idle, but when we collect it, it hops up in the air. All right, looking good. Now I realize that the items aren't actually doing anything yet, but we don't really want them to. These items will be usable from our inventory, so we'll add that functionality during the inventory videos. That said, we do want to just make sure that we make this into a prefab before we go any further. So let's click on our prefab folder. I'm just going to drag my mushroom down in here, and since I want this to be a generic loot prefab, I'm just going to make sure that I take the scriptable object off and then rename it as loot prefab. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and play around.
Fine. Mushroom item. Then? What did you do?
During the inventory videos. That said, we do want to just make sure that we make this into a prefab before we go any further. So let's click on our prefab folder. I'm just going to drag my mushroom down in here. And since I want this to be a generic loot prefab, I'm just going to make sure that I take the scriptable object off and then rename it as loot prefab.
Oh, just remove the scriptable object altogether. Yeah, that's what I did. And we'll rename this to loot. Then why does it still show a mushroom for a sprite though?
Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and play around with this, adding a bunch more objects into the game. I just created some extra scriptable objects here, so I can drag my loot prefab in, just change the scriptable objects, move them onto my map, and now I can walk around and collect them. All right, I hope you found that one helpful. I know we're just getting started here, but we're set up nicely now so that in the next video, we'll be able to start on our inventory system.
Cool.
I hope to see you in that video. Until then, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers. Hey everyone, it's Matt here with Nightrun Studio, and in this series, we're working at making items, an inventory, and ultimately a shop system. In our first video, we got started by creating items, but admittedly, it's a little underwhelming. They have a cute little animation when you collect them. They've got scriptable objects, so we can give them all sorts of stats, but that's actually all they do at the moment. So next up, we need to make an inventory so we actually have somewhere to store these items, and inventories means user interface. So in this video, we're going to construct the interface for our inventory, and in the following one, we'll get it up and running. Let's get started. Now the core of this system is going to be a simple inventory canvas with two parts. First of all, you'll have a gold icon, which we're going to attach a Text Mesh Pro to that will keep track of the amount of gold we currently have. We'll also have this slots game object. This is just going to serve as a holder for each of our inventory slots, and the slots themselves are going to have three parts. The inventory slot will just be our graphic of the square that holds the item, and then inside of that we're going to have a icon which will show the item we have, as well as a text for our quantity. All of this data will be populated through the item scriptable objects we created in the last video. Alright, with that done, let's actually get making this thing. Now our first step is to create the inventory canvas. Let's right click in the hierarchy, go to UI canvas, and call it inventory canvas. All we need to do with this is click on the scaler and make sure that we've set it to scale with
Scaler. Constant size of scale screen. Yep.
screen size. We need to make sure our reference resolution matches what we have in our game.
True. 1920. 80. We have game is actually not correct. I mean, it is, but
Game view. Next up, we're going to add a UI image. This one will be called gold. And if you have an image you'd like to use, you want to attach that now. I'm going to use G_idle, which is from the Tiny Swords asset pack.
gold. Okay, sprite G_. I'm probably gonna need to fix that sprite as well. Idle. Dude, there's a couple different ones. What did he use? Idle, no shadow, and spawn. Idle, no shadow. Spawn. It's like he picks that one. Okay, what I also need to do, because all these things are not good. Tiny assets, tiny swords, resources, gold mine, resources, shipped all. Oh, there's a prefab situation going on. Oh, because they already got like these things. Oh, that's me want this, this, D64, no filter, 32. Why? Control? Okay, I could do control. Make them all 64. Them all no point. 32. Apply. Now if we go to gold, like there we go.
I'm just going to double click on the gold to zoom out here and turn on my gizmo so I can see where my screen size is. You'll notice the gold is very small. We'll fix that in a moment. First of all though, let's go to our rect transform where I'm just going to anchor it to the top right corner. I'm also going to hold down option and click on the top right so that it actually pulls itself right up into that corner.
Okay.
At this point, we can just set some margins to move it away, but no matter what screen size we're working with now, it will be anchored to this position. I'm going to go with -100 on the X and Y and give it a width and height of about 300. When I go to game view, that's looking about right, except that when I zoom in, I can see that it's kind of blurry. If you're having a problem like that, you just need to go into your asset.
Yeah, I already made my adjustments. He did not make the adjustments. We're good.
Folder and click on the actual sprite you're using. Here, if we take a look at our filter mode,
He's keeping it at
I'm gonna
100
switch it
pixels
from
per unit.
bilinear to point no filter. This gets rid of the smoothing that Unity wants to do and preserves the nice sharp edges that you want when working with pixel art. Now that we've got our gold icon, we can add our text. So let's right click in the hierarchy, go to UI and add Text Mesh Pro. If you haven't already added this, you can go to Window, Package Manager, and then make sure to get it from the Unity registry. At this point, I'm just going to put 00 as my default text, and I kind of want to have mine anchored down in the bottom right corner. So again, I'll go to my rect transform, click on the bottom right here, and then hold Option, and one more time click the bottom right to have it. Suck into that corner. Before I spend too much time on adjustment, I'm going to get the text to about the size and shape that I want it to be. So I'm going to use the Bangers font. We'll go with the size of about 72.
Situation's a little bit different than mine. Text. Oh, because it's like.
I'm going to give mine a black outline with a
Why does this look so different than mine? It don't matter.
about a 0.3 size to it. And then I'm also going to just anchor all my text to the right. Now I can actually do the fine tuning of positioning. So here I'll just play with my X and Y until I get it kind of right where I want it. Now just to keep things organized, I'll rename this to amount text. We can then close up the gold and we're ready.
He wants it that close? That seems odd. I don't like that. Oh, that's the whole object. Actually, that actually doesn't look too bad. I'm not going to be
ready
too
to make our slot. So let's right click on the inventory canvas and we're going to create an empty game object. I'm going to name this one slots. And you'll notice right away when I click on my rect tool that it's in the center of the screen. Once again, I'm going to anchor this up to the top right. And now we can actually just right away when I click on my rect tool that it's the gold and we're ready to make our slot. So let's right click on the inventory canvas and we're going to create an
empty. Okay.
empty game object. I'm going to name this one slots. And you'll notice right away when I click on my rect tool that it's in the center of the screen. Once again, I'm going to anchor this up to the top right. And now we can actually just drag.
Why does that happen? Come on. Okay. Gonna aim this to the top right. You doing?
And give it roughly the shape you want your hotbar to be. We can.
Oh, I see. I see. What is he using? Position?
adjust that in a little bit. Once you've got a rough idea of the size and position, we can right click on slots and add a UI image. This is going to be our first inventory slot.
Okay, gotcha. First, let's move gold icon down. I feel like that should be moved down.
Slot. We're going to make it a child of the slots, which is the holder.
Oh no, that's not what he did.
For all of these slots. Now, if you want to, you can just keep it as a white box. I'm using the Tiny Sorts asset pack, so here I'm going to use button blue 9 slides as the backing. For my slots. I'll then just kind of drag it up into the corner of my hotbar. The sizing doesn't matter too much as we're going to automate it later on, but for now I'll just kind of fill the space. I'm then going to just look at this image here, and we want to make sure that raycast target is in fact clicked. At this point we can right.
All right, raycast target is. Wait, did he just move it? Oh.
For my slots. I'll then just kind of drag it up into the corner of my hotbar. The sizing doesn't matter too much as we're going to automate it later on, but for now I'll just kind of fill the space. I'm then going to just look at this image here, and we want to make sure that raycast target is in fact clicked. At this point, we can right click on the inventory slot, and we're going to add a UI image. This is going to be our item icon, and for now,
Let's rename that.
I'm just going to grab a meat one, which is m_idle in the Tiny Swords. That's just going to be my placeholder for the moment. We can then size it up so that it fills that space appropriately. Now, as I size up my steak here, I notice that it is also blurry, so I just am going to click on the parent sprite here in the assets folder and make sure that I set it to point no filter. At this point, you can just sort of play with the sizing and positioning until you get it looking the way you like. All right, now next up, we want to actually have some quantity text. So let's right click on the inventory slot again, and we'll add some more Text Mesh Pro. I'm going to call this one quantity text and then sort of rinse and repeat what we.
Gotcha. UI Text Mesh Pro quantity text.
did before. I'm going to anchor it to the bottom, resize my text box.
Anchor to the bottom. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Put a 0, 0. I'll anchor that down into the bottom corner the way I like it, and then select bangers. Once again, go with a size of 72, and then make any final adjustments so that it's actually placed about where you want it. Now at this point, I want to make this slot into a prefab, so I'm just going to go into my prefabs folder here and drag the inventory.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to make this a little bigger. Probably make it to the right. Same with this. Okay, that's already like that. Good.
Slot down inside. Now to get our slots populating here so there's more than slot down inside. Now
Inventory slot. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Prefab it.
Get our slots populating here so there's more than just one, we're going to go to the slots game object and we're going to add a grid layout component. This allows us to control the size and spacing of every item underneath the slots, so in this case of each inventory slot. Here we can set our cell size. I'm going to go with about 200 by 200. I want it to start in the upper left and we are going to go across horizontally.
Left horizontal.
So I can leave those settings as is. You can see here now.
Oh, spacing. I missed that part. 200 by 200. I'll trust the process.
200 by 200. I want it to start in the upper left and we are going to go across horizontally so I can leave those settings as is. You can see here now that when I duplicate my slots with Command D, they just populate. Once they run out of room though, in my slots row, they'll start moving to the next row. You can add as many of these as you like, and you can see easily here how this could become a full inventory system. That said, even getting up to 5, it feels like it's taken a lot of real estate on my screen, and so I'm just going to go with 3. Now, if you have other UI elements also using bangers, you may have noticed that when we set the outline of our inventory quantity texts to black, it did that for every bangers piece of text we have in our scene. And if you want to fix that, here's how we can do it. You'll notice on our text that we have everything set to a material preset of the bangers SDF material. So when you make a change to one thing using this material, it will change all of them. So what we just want to do is create a new material. We can actually do this by clicking on our font asset here. This will help us find where we need to go in our assets menu. And here, if you scroll up, you can see all of the different SDF materials. I'm actually just going to grab this drop
Shadow. Bangers, drop shadow.
shadow one here and make a copy of it. So I'll hit Command D. I can rename that to Bangers SDF Inventory and then
Oops.
click on my inventory slot, and in the quantity text, make sure that I've selected that as my preset. Now if I make changes to this preset...
Okay, so... What?
It won't affect...
Oh, oh, I gotcha.
the other elements in my game. Now, since I made a change to this inventory slot, I want to apply that to all of them. So I'll go to my overrides, click apply all, and now it will change the text for all of my inventory slots.
What? No. Don't do that.
I'm going to do the same thing for my gold. Now that I've got separate material presets, I can actually go back to my inventory slots. I'm going to do the same thing for my gold. Now that I've got separate...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Gold. Gold. Change the material. Inventory.
Material preset, I can actually go back to my other UI elements like my HP text and change its outline safely back to white without it...
Ah, I gotcha. Okay, so if I go here, let's go to your HP. There you are. Something like that. Oh, because it was black. And then outline should be white. I said this doesn't matter. Gotcha. So they use the same material. Okay, I understand. I got it.
Any of my inventory. All right, now I know UI really isn't the most exciting thing on Earth, and our items still aren't actually doing anything, but...
Inventory, item, or slots. Something like that. Kind of a lot. It's fine.
We're now set up with all of the relevant UI elements so that in the next video, we can actually get our items populating this user interface. I hope you found this one helpful. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers. Hey everyone, it's Matt here with Nightrun Studio, and so far in this series, we've been doing a lot of setup. So it's time we finally hooked things up. In this video, we'll make it so that we can collect items and have them actually populate our inventory. We're going to start off by making it so that when we collect gold, it actually tallies up here with our gold icon. So let's head into scene view. I'm just going to drag a loot prefab that we made in the first video up here into my game. Now,
All right, so let's go player, focus, Prefabs. Loop. Oops.
When I click on it, I just need to add an item scriptable
I thought I made a loop thing. Did I put it somewhere funny? Oh, loop, loop pickup, loop prefab, loop item SO. Oh, that's not a prefab. That's a scriptable object. That's a script. That's an animation. So I never made this prefab. Oh, this got slapped in here. No, that's something different. Slap, mushroom. It's right here. Okay, F2. Loops. Prefab. Sure. Right, so then drop this guy here.
object in order to get this item set up, but I haven't actually made one yet for my gold. So let's head into our scriptable object.
Scriptables. Inventory chop. Scriptable item SOs. We got a loop. So we do duplicate F2. Does not like F2. Okay. We're gonna call this gold. Possible.
Objects folder. I'm just going to make a copy of an existing SO here. We'll rename it to gold. We'll just give it a name, a description, make sure it's got
Name gold. It's gonna be a bag of gold. Yeah. G underscore G. Fortunately, that's fine. Is gold. Current value 0.
got a sprite, and then check the is gold box. I'm also just going to turn off stats as the gold isn't going to make us faster or more powerful. With that done, we can go back to our loop prefab, add the gold SO here, decide how.
Oh, right. So now we're gonna add gold. Ooh, look at that. Cash money. Rules everything.
How much gold we actually want to pick up. I'm going to go with 7. All right, now that
So 15.
we've got a gold item, we can actually get scripting. So let's begin in our loot script. Now at the moment we
Yeah, we didn't actually. Oh, look, I never even saved that. Worked up.
have things set up so that whenever the player collides with this object, we play an animation and then destroy the object. We're going to change that up here and actually send out a message to any scripts that are listening and let them know that an item's been collected. So let's head up top here. We're going to make a public static event action. Now at first, Unity's not going to recognize that. You can right click and under quick actions, we can just go to using system. You could also just type using system. Now it will recognize that and we can pass in some parameters. First of all, we just want to let any listeners know which item we picked up, so we'll put item SO, and what the quantity of that item is, so we'll also send over an integer. Finally, we'll name our event. I'm going to call it onItemLooted, as we'll use this anytime we collect any items. Now we can go down to our onTrigger method, and here we're just going to go onItemLooted ? Which just makes sure there's actually a listener, and if there is, it's going to invoke this specific event. Now we do need to pass along our item SO and integer, so we'll just put that information in here. Alright, we're now sending out a message, but we don't have any scripts listening to it. So let's head back into Unity, where we can create a new C# script. And here we're actually going to make our inventory manager.
Inventory manager script inventory shop. It's going speedy, but I'm following along. Here. Scripts. Create model behavior.
Which is really going to be the hub of everything we're doing in our inventory. I'm going to go ahead and just attach this to my inventory canvas right now.
Good idea. Inventory manager.
Now so that I don't forget later on, and then we can open up the script. Now we can start by getting rid of these start and update methods, as we won't be needing those, and instead we're going to add an onEnable method. This is where we're going to subscribe and let the loot know that we're listening. So we'll just go loot.onItemLoaded, and here we're just going to tell it what to do when an item has been looted. In this case, we're going to call a new method called addItem, which we'll create in just a moment. Before we do that, however, let's add a private void on disable, and just make sure that we're unsubscribing from this event anytime this object gets disabled. Now we'll create our addItem method, and we need to make sure that this one's public, as later on other scripts are going to need to be able to talk to it. You'll
Really like Pascal case, but that's C#, I guess, how they roll. But that is what it is.
You'll notice that the red lines haven't gone away from my onEnable and disable methods, and that's because we need to take in parameters. We need to listen to what item SO has been collected and how many of them we're getting. Now we can do an if statement. We're going to check to see if the item SO is gold or not. This is just a reference to that checkbox we put in our item SO for whether or not it's gold. Now if
Whoa, submit it.
reference to that checkbox we put
Oh,
in
okay,
our item
yeah,
SO
yeah.
for whether or not it's gold. Now, if
Item
it's gold, we're gonna-
SO is gold. Okay. If item SO that is gold, then you're going to increase. Well, I guess we didn't quite get there.
going to need to do some stuff, but first of all, we need to keep track of how much gold we have.
Mhm.
So let's come up top where we can create a public integer.
Wait, why is this still yelling at me? Don't overload add item matches delegate item assignment. Yeah, that's stupid. Oh, why did that happen? No. Stop it. There we go. All right. So yeah, we need a variable. So this, I'm assuming, is going to be what updates the gold text. So we're gonna need a
gold in our
reference
gold
to the
total.
Text Mesh
We're just
Pro.
gonna make a public Text Mesh Pro text reference,
Yep.
which will just be for our gold text. And we'll need to make sure that we add that we are using TM Pro so that our script can actually recognize that code. Now we can say what's going to happen when we find gold. So we just want to make sure that our gold goes up by whatever quantity of gold we've just found. We also want to update our
Gold plus equals quantity? Oh yeah, quantity, obviously. And then we need to update gold text.
Text Mesh Pro. So we'll tell our gold text, and we're just going to make it equal to our gold. Now, if the item was gold, we don't need to go any further in this method, so we're just going to type return. Back in Unity, let's open up our inventory canvas, look under our gold at the amount text there.
Void? No, it's not a what? It's a void method. Why would you?
Now, if the item was gold, we don't need to go any further in this method, so we're just going to type return.
Oh, I get it. I get it. Return out of this function, so you don't have to call anything else. Because you might need to do other things. I got it. That makes sense. Return out of the thing. Gotcha.
Back in Unity, let's open up our inventory canvas, look under our gold at the amount text there, and we just want to make sure that our manager knows where that text is, so we'll drag it into the gold text box. That's actually all the setup we need, and now when we get in the game, we can collect gold, and there we go. It's up to 7.
What is it true? We got 0, 0, 0 gold. Hey, we got 15 gold. We got bunnies. I see a problem. Yeah, how did that happen? Yeah, why is that? What happened? 220. Let's change it. It's just 0.6. Yeah, something ain't right. Something happened with my camera position. The 0, 0, 0. No, it doesn't matter. That's actually fine with me that way. What happened to my camera? So yeah, if I put this on 16:9, that's why this whole time. So 16:9 does not mean 1920. Oh, but then the camera will adjust. Or will it? Play maximized. Oh no, that's not looking good at all. Okay, so I need to fix that. I don't know what happened. So let's see. Your engine is zoomed in. It's likely due to the incorrect camera settings in the UI scale. To fix this, you'll need to adjust your camera's field of view or aspect ratio to ensure the UI is scaled properly. Field of view, FOV. If you're using an ortho, okay. Canvas scaler. That's probably why. Hold on. Possibly. Yeah, I don't think the main camera matters. Oh, but it does have the Cinemachine brain. Is it this? Is it this that's jacked up? No, because it's. UI scaling? If your UI elements are not scaling, it's not my UI elements, it's just the whole thing. Or is it? It might not be. Hold on. Let me just play. Let me just play. Could be my UI elements, but why the hell is it looking like this? It's broken. Resolution and presentation. Player settings. The resolution is default screen width set to 920 respectively. The full screen mode is set to window. The full screen is designed. If you need your game to be dynamic, zoom. If your game view is zoomed in, use the zoom slider in the game view to adjust the level. No, that's fine. Make sure the game view's aspect ratio is the target resolution. Game view code, camera scripts. If you have a custom camera script setting, start with simplest fix. Adjust the camera's FOV or orthographic size if you're using perspective or orthographic camera. But how? Explain it. Oh man. This is not correct. This should not be. So confused. So if I zoom in. Oh wait, hold on. I maximized. Yeah, so this is what it would look like maximized, but even still, this resolution is not correct. Because I created this at 16:9 resolution. Full HD is what I want. And at the full scale, it's this big. So it's all screwed up. It's so stupid. Okay, that's just a problem that I can't really deal with right now, unfortunately. Let's see. Unity. Switching from 16:9 to full HD stretches makes UI too big. When switching from 16:9 aspect to the full HD, the UI may appear larger due to the canvas scaling. Fixes: use canvas scaler component and set the UI scale mode to scale screen size. Dude, I swear that's what I have. Match width and match height. That's what I got. That's what it is, man. Add a canvas scaler component to the root canvas. I do have it. 1920. If this was 720 by I don't know. 300. Dude, everything is so big. Why? Let me see. Yeah, so none of this matters because I'm using this. So that's not doing anything to the. So it's the UI. The UI is well, it's not jacked up technically. No, I guess it is jacked up. Hmm. Because the camera can't go down there. So let's move. No, because it should be able to see that. Station control, cinematic, camera distance 10. Oh, it's frustrating. Spring position. It's broken. It's annoying. I mean, I guess because I'm at the bottom, but like, what the hell's going on? It's fine. Is this what I want?
All right, now we need to get the items working. Now back in our, we'll tell our gold text reference, which will just be for our gold text, and we'll for text mesh probe.
UI manager, event stats manager. Dude, they're all not correct. So how do we fix this? Dude, if this is the screen size, is there just something wrong with this? Hold on, let me just exit out and close that tab. Did I just do all that for nothing? No, because look, the scale again. The only thing I need to know is this normal? Because this is a 0.5x scale here. But play maximized. What is this? Opens the frame debugger. That's just wasting a ton of time dealing with this. I may be just wasting my time. My own fault. Okay. Well, so so why is this? I mean, it's the screen size. Whatever. Not gonna worry about it. This is driving me crazy. I'm not gonna worry.
So we'll tell our gold text, and we're just going to make it equal to our gold. Now, if the item was gold, we don't need to go any further in this method, so we're just going to type return. Back in Unity, let's open up our inventory canvas, look under our gold at the amount text there, and we just want to make sure that our manager knows where that text is, so we'll drag it into the gold text box. That's actually all the setup we need, and now when we get in the game, we can collect gold, and there we go.
We're gonna finish up this video.
All right, now we need to get the items working. Now back in our inventory manager, let's imagine that it's not gold we're collecting. So we're gonna add an else statement here, and there's a fair bit of logic we're gonna wanna do to update our UI for items, so we're gonna make that in a special method just to separate our concerns. So let's call update UI here. Now we could set up all of our logic for updating the slots here, however that would quickly turn this into a sort of God script that's trying to do everything all at once, and it becomes hard to manage. We want to delegate that responsibility to another script. So let's head back into Unity, where we're going to create a inventory slot script. Now that we've created that script, I'm just going to go into my inventory slot
Create.
prefab and make sure to add the new component so that I don't forget later on. We can then open it up. I'm going to
what?
inventory slot prefab and make sure to add the new component so that I don't forget later
Inventory slot.
on. We can then open
It's slot. It's inventory slot script. Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Prefab. Inventory slot. Okay. Let's see. I haven't done that in a while.
it up. I'm going to begin by getting rid of the start and update method. And the most important thing for this slot is that it needs to know what item it is. So let's make a public item SO reference. We're going to have each slot keep track of its own quantity, and then it also needs to be able to talk to its user interface. So let's go ahead here and make an image reference. We'll call it item image. Though for this to work, we're going to have to add the using line unityengine.ui. We're also going to add the using TM Pro so that we can make a reference to our quantity text. At this
All right, so skadoosh all this. We already know we're going to use TM Pro, Unity Engine UI. So we need canvas, but we need SO objects. Quantity. We need an image in TMP. Item image, also item icon, whatever's the same idea. Public TMP underscore text item quantity text. Yeah.
At this point, we can head down and make a public void update UI method, and this is where we're going to do all of our updating of the UI. So let's get our item images sprite and just make it equal to the scriptable objects icon. And let's just pause here and go up top and make a conditional statement here. As if we don't have an item scriptable object assigned to this slot, we don't want it trying to access data on an object it doesn't have. So we'll just go if the item scriptable object is not null. Now we can also make sure
But it's not null. It should never be null unless it's being destroyed. But if it's not null, obviously we need to item image equals item so dot icon. Why does that just not show up? Oh, item image dot sprite. You're right. That's the same.
that we turn this sprite on or off, depending on whether or not it should actually have an image. We'll just copy that line, and we're going to make an else statement so that if there is no item in here, we'll
set the game object, set it active to true. Oh, right. So it will pop up and show on the screen. That makes sense. Set active true. Else, if it's not null, if it's null, we have to set it to true. Right. Item. We're still doing the same thing. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe it makes sense.
we'll just turn off the image of an item.
Set it false. There's no scriptable object.
Now we're ready to update our quantity text, so we'll tell it that its text should be equal to quantity, and don't forget that we need to convert this to a string so that the text can read it.
Yeah, it's a string, I know.
We'll then do a similar thing down here if there's no item, except that this time we're going to make our quantity text's text equal to just empty quotation marks. All right, we're finally starting to get somewhere now, so I'm just going to go into my inventory slot prefab and make sure that it knows where to find its own image, that's the item icon, as well as its quantity text.
What are we doing to
finally
meet?
finish our inventory manager. Now the first thing we need to do is
Oh, the campus environment endorsement. What is he doing? Jesus Christ. Yeah. So we're going to the canvas. Inventory slots.
If there's no item, except that this time we're going to make our quantity text's text equal to just empty quotation marks. All right, we're finally starting to get somewhere now, so I'm just going to go into my inventory slot prefab and make sure that it knows.
The prefab, the prefab. That's what I meant to say. Inventory slot. Right, so we can move it, but not remove this. Script. Item image.
Knows where to find its own image. That's the item icon.
Alright, so item icon is the image. Quantity text is text. The scriptable object is whatever we want it to be.
As well as its quantity text. Now we can finally finish our inventory manager. Now the first thing we need to do is actually make it so we can talk to those inventory slots. So let's make a public inventory slot array, and I'm just going to call this one item.
Inventory manager, huh? Okay.
Slots. Let's head down into our add item method. And right now, if it's not gold, we don't want to call update UI right away as we don't know which slot we're actually updating. So instead, we're going to make a for each loop. You can get this by typing for e and then double tapping tab in most IDEs. Now here we are just going to call these slots, and for each slot in our item slots array, we just want to go slot.updateUI. Now the only problem with that is that this is going to
Oh, we just did a var, whatever it's assumed.
make it so that if we pick up a stake, it fills every slot with that stake. So first of all, let's actually look for an empty slot. To do this, we're just going to do an if statement. We'll say if the slot's item SO is
Okay, gotcha.
null. So that way it will only fill the slot if it's actually
Slot item SO equals. Oh no, we're gonna call it update. Slot update.
empty. Now at this point we're almost there, but if we look at the inventory slots update UI method, it actually needs to know what its item SO and quantity are in order to do that update. So we're going to need to send across that information. So before the
Oh, that's wrong. Update slot update. That's not a thing. Where did I get that from? Where did I add item? Update UI. It's not here. It's in slot.
we're almost there, but if we look at the inventory slots update UI method, it actually needs to know what its item SO and quantity are in order to do that update. So we're going to need to send across that information. So before the slot updates its UI, let's just make sure we tell it that its item SO should be equal to this new item SO, and that its quantity should be equal to the new quantity. Keep in mind that at the moment, moment this doesn't support stacking, but we will definitely be adding that in the next video. Now at this point, we would update every single empty slot with the new item, and we don't want to do that. So we're just going to type return here so that once we found an empty slot, it terminates the loop. Back in Unity, we're just going to click on our inventory canvas. Where we now have this new drop down for our item slots. I'm going to lock my inspector so that it stays here. And click on the first inventory slot, hold Shift, and click the bottom one to select them all. And then I'll just drag them over into the item slots array. All right, we're ready to test. Now in game, we've still got 0 stakes at the top, which is a little weird, but when we collect the items, you'll notice that it is populating the inventory. All right, let's fix that starting status of our slots. Now all we want to do here is just add back our
Yeah, see, I don't have a starting stakes freaking item. What? Did a thing that I didn't do. So I guess let's make it stakes. Item slots, probably because I didn't actually. Oh, it's unlocked first off. Item inventory. It doesn't have an item SO. So let's create one. All right, I'll be right back. Hold on.
start method, and at the beginning we just want to update the UI of every slot. So we're going to make another for each sloot. And here we're just going to make it so that for each slot in our item slots, we just want to call slot.update. That way, when they're empty, they'll update as empty when we start the game. Now, for anyone else using the Tiny Swords asset pack, if you're having something like this happen when you play, where the items are filling with really weird sizes, I'll show you why. What's going on here is that our meat_idle is meant to be an item, and it's 128 by 128 pixels. However, things like the mushroom are actually just meant to be decorations, and they're half the size, which is why things are blowing up to strange sizes when we put them into our slots. Now you can actually use all of these, you just need to do a little edit to the sprite, which does mean using whatever external program you have to edit your sprites. In my case, I'm a Photoshop user, so I'm just going to reveal this in Finder. You'll notice here that my mushroom has just